Hey there, friends, what up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Nun Gimel, Daf 53 of Masechta Yevamos, friends. Well, today we wrap up the fifth parak of Masechta Yevamos, and we start the sixth parak of Masechta Yevamos. We're just kind of going through kind of all these details listed in the Mishnah on Daf Nun, and we're just going to continue going through these details, friends. We're just going to continue going through these details. Alright, we're on Daf Nun Gimel Amud Aleph, about 15 or so lines into the page. Right by the two dots. Cholatz v'oso maimer v'nosan get uvo'al. So, the Mishnah had said, if a fellow does chalitza, and then afterwards he does maimer or gives a get, etc. And then it also says if he does yibum, and then afterwards does maimer or get, or things like that. So he said, ein acher chalitza klum. After chalitza there's nothing. So now, v'nisnei nami ein acher biya klum. Well, technically, if you look at the Mishnah, we had pointed this out when we learned the Mishnah, the flow of the Mishnah is really discussing chalitza, right? If he did chalitza, and then afterwards does maimer, etc. And then it goes into biya. Right, if he does yibum and then does maimer, etc., and then it says einachar chalitza klum. Shouldn't it say einachar yibum klum, einachar biya klum? Right? After all, that is like the last thing that it was talking about. So v'nesni nami einachar biya klum. So right, I'm reading that again. So it should say that there isn't anything after biya. Abai v'rava damitavayu tni einachar biya klum. So Abai and Rava say, okay, fine. So teach instead of einachar chalitza klum, teach einachar biya klum. Then once you do biya, yibum is over. And then memeli you could extrapolate for chalitza as well. V'tanadidan ataras yivam l'shuka difale, whereas the Tana in our Mishnah preferred to talk about chalitza because chalitza enables Reuben's widow to get married to whoever she wants, and I guess that's more interesting than simply to have Shimon and Sarah do yibum. Fine. Echod Yevamo achas, echod shtei Yevamis. Alright? So now the Mishnah had said that these halachas apply whether you have one Yevama and two brothers, whether you have two Yevamas and one brother. Masisin loka ben Azai. So this Mishnah is not like ben Azai because ben Azai differentiates between, two Yevamas or two Yavams. Titani ben Azai Omer says ben Azai ishmaimer echod. What? Ben Azai Omer, not Echod. It says Ben Azai, Yesh Maimer Acher Maimer B'Shnei Yevamin, V'Yevama Achas, that there is Maimer Acher Maimer, like the Chachomim, when it comes to two Yavams and one Yevama. Ve'ein Maimer Acher Maimer, B'Shnei Yevamas V'Yavam Echod, but there's no Maimer Acher Maimer when you have two Yevamos and one Yavam. Alright, so there you go. Oh man. The washing machine, the dryer was just going, and it was good because it was drowning out the background noise. But this is rough. Now the washing machine, the dryer finished, and now I can hear the background noise again. But now it's going a little shtickle again. It does this thing where it kind of stops and goes a few times. Oh man, this is not going to be fun. Alright, well, let me tell you. Fine, so Ben Azai differentiates between, if there's two Yavams and one Yavama, or two Yavamas and one Yavam. Alright, fine. So maybe we could find some more, maybe there's more stuff in the washing machine we could put in the dryer, and then we'll start it all over again. Maybe that could be okay. Anyways, fine. Ketad Maimer Lozoi V'chule. Okay, so the Mishnah had said that if you do Maimer with one of the sisters, one of the wives, and then you do chalitza with the other one, right? So let's say you have Reuven who's married to Sarah and Rivka, and then Reuven dies. Now Shimon, if he does maimer with Sarah, and then he does chalitza with Rivka, so says the Gemara, so let's say they support Shmuel. How come? Shmuel, because Shmuel says chalitz levailas maimer lo nifter tzarasa. Friends, do you hear that? Shmuel says that in a situation such as this, where Shimon does maimer with Sarah, and he does, if he does maimer with Sarah, so then if he does chalitza with Sarah, it wouldn't work to be poter Rivka as well, since it's a shtickle shvache chalitza, right? Because since vis-a-vis Sarah, chalitza is not enough, he also has to give a get. So therefore, it's not a complete chalitza, and therefore it wouldn't work for Rivka. So now, if we look at the Mishnah, what's the Mishnah saying? That he's doing Maimer with Sarah and he's doing chalitza with Rivka. That's perfectly in line with Shmuel, who says that that the chalitza with Sarah would not work for Rivka, since Sarah would also need a get, since it was Maimer. So therefore, rather you should do chalitza with Rivka, and that would be a complete chalitza, and Memela would work for Sarah as well. Although I guess she would still need a get though. So let's say that our Mishnah is in support of Shmuel, who's saying that when you do Maimer with Sarah, you have to do chalitza with Rivka. So let's say this supports Shmuel, that says Shmuel cholas levailas Maimer, that if you do chalitza to Sarah, who you did Maimer with, lo nifter also, that would not work for Rivka, since you also have to give a get to Sarah. So the chalitza is not complete. V'tuv to Rav Yosef, and it's a kasha on Rav Yosef. What did Rav Yosef say? Rav Yosef had said the concept of, you remember this concept that came up a few times, that you shouldn't spill well water, well wood. Diana pointed that out. It's coming up a few times. You shouldn't spill your well wood on the floor, because your friend might need it. So therefore, here also, right? So Rav Yosef would say, in this case, actually, you may as well chaparain and do chalitza with Sarah, because if you do chalitza with Sarah, you can leave Rivka alone, and she could still marry a kohen, right? She could still marry a kohen. Meaning, if you do Maimer with Sarah and you do chalitza with Rivka, now Memela you're gonna have to give a get to Sarah because you did Maimer with Sarah, and now neither Sarah nor Rivka would be able to marry a kohen. Rav Yosef would suggest doing chalitza with Sarah, so at least you leave Rivka alone and let the chalitza work for both Sarah and for Rivka, and Rivka could still marry a kohen at least. So mikatani choletz katani di'evet. So Rav Yosef could defend himself and say, no, the Mishnah doesn't say choletz, right, to Rivka, that he should do chalitza with Rivka. It says if he did do chalitza with Rivka, but Rav Yosef would recommend doing chalitza with Sarah. Because since leave Rivka alone, let her still be able to marry a kohen. Get lazoi v'chulei. So we had said in our Mishnah that if he gives a get to Sarah and he gives a get as well to Rivka, so then he just needs to do chalitza. So it said in the Mishnah tzrichos chalitza, that they both need chalitza, right? If we look at the Mishnah, right, it says get lozoi, come on, where are you? Get lozoi, yeah. Get lozoi, tzrichos emenu chalitza, they need chalitza, right? That it sounds like they both need chalitza. And of course the Mishnah had said that this applies both when there's one yavam and two yavamas, or even when there's two yavams and one yavama, which means that if Shimon gave Sarah a get, and Levi also gave Sarah a get, so then both Shimon and Levi would also have to do chalitza. So let's say the Rabbi Bar Avuna. So let's say that this supports Rabbi Bar Avuna. The Amar Rabbi Bar Avuna, chalitza psula tzricha l'chaza kol ha'achin. That when you have chalitza psula, a shvacha chalitza, such as this, where they first had given a get, right, which makes the chalitza weaker, so then all the brothers have to do chalitza. So let's say that this is a support for Rabbi Bar Avuna, who says that, when you give a get, so then all the brothers have to do chalitza. It sounds like that's what we're saying. Tzrichos chalitza. That they plural need chalitza, and just like it applies to two women, it would also apply when there's two brothers. So my tzrichos da'amos. So you could say meh. That's what you could say. You could say meh. Because, maybe when it says tzrichos, it doesn't literally mean that they both need a get. It means in general, chalitza, it means in general, there would be a need for chalitza, but lav dafka that they both need chalitza, or that when there's two yavams, they would both need to do chalitza. Fine. Get lozoi v'cholatz lozoi. If he gave a get to Sarah, and he did chalitza with Rivka, let's say that of course this supports Shmuel, who says that in the situation where there's a shvacha chalitza, right? That Shmuel says that if you if you give a get to Sarah, so then if you do chalitza with Sarah, it wouldn't work for Rivka since it's a shvache chalitza, right? It's a chalitza that's already after a get. So if you do chalitza with Sarah, it would not work for Rivka. Now, over here we're saying that if you give a get to Sarah and then you do chalitza with Rivka, which sounds just like what Shmuel is saying, that if you give the get to Sarah, you'd have to do chalitza with Rivka. So let me say that the Shmuel, so let's say that this supports Shmuel, v'tavet you have to do of Yosef, and of course the kashan of Yosef, who says don't spill well wood on the floor if your friend can use it. So according to Yosef, he would suggest giving the get, if you gave a get to Sarah, so then also do chalitza with Sarah and leave Rivka alone. So, alright, so Ta'avatuv to do Yosef mikatani cholitz katani di'evet. So the Gemara says, well, it doesn't say that if you gave a get to Sarah cholitz l'Rivka, that you should do chalitza with Rivka, rather cholatz l'Rivka, if he did do chalitza with Rivka, but really, ideally, you should do chalitza with Sarah and leave Rivka alone. Cholatz v'cholatz, or cholatz v'chulei. Alright, we said that if you did chalitza with both Sarah and Rivka, or if you did chalitza with Sarah and then with Rivka you did Yibum or Maimer or anything like that. So then we said what? We said Einach chalitza klum, v'lesn nami einach bia klum. So why don't we also say, like we asked earlier, that we should say that there's nothing after bia, because after all, if we look at the Mishnah, first it was talking about chalitza, and then it was talking about bia, so shouldn't you say einach bia klum? Okay, so teach that there's nothing after bia. Whereas the Tana in our Mishnah was more interested in talking about the chalutza who can now marry anybody, rather than the situation of Yibum, where it's just Shimon doing Yibum, I guess. Ben Yavam echad l'shtei Yevamos v'chulei. Oh, so okay. So now, before we do the next part of the Gemara, we have to explain a machlokas between Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. So there's a machlokas between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish about, so it kind of plays out in two ways, right? So let's say, right, so we've been discussing when you have Ruvain is married to Sarah and to Rivka, and then Ruvain dies, now Shimon needs to do even with Sarah and Rivka, right? There's that connection. There's also a situation when Ruvain is married to Sarah, and then he's got two brothers, Shimon and Levi, right? And then Ruvain dies, now Shimon and Levi have a connection to Sarah. So now, there's a machlokas between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. So let's say the first case, right, where Ruvain is married to Sarah and to Rivka, and Ruvain dies, and then there's Shimon. So if Shimon does chalitza with Sarah, so then what's the relationship now with Rivka? What did I just say? If Shimon does chalitza with Sarah, so what's the relationship now with Rivka? If he sleeps with Rivka, is that a lav of Kevin Shelo Bana Shuv Lo Yivne, just like with Sarah? Or is it a chiyuv karis of Eishes Ach? So according to Rabbi Yochanan, it's a lav. According to Rish Lakish, it's a chiyuv karis of, according to Rish Lakish, it's a chiyuv karis of Eishes Ach. Now, the same thing also with if you have Ruvain married to Sarah, Ruvain dies, and then you have Shimon and Levi. If Shimon does chalitza with Sarah, and then, so what's Levi's relationship with Sarah? So Shimon and Sarah would be a lav of Kevin Shlobon Shul Yivne. But Levi, however, what's he vis-a-vis Sarah? So according to Rabbi Yochanan, also it's a lav, right? Shimon is the representative of Levi, just like by Shimon it's a lav, so also by Levi it's a lav. Whereas according to Rish Lakish, it would be a chiyuv karis between Levi and Sarah. So now, with that introduction, so Bishlam Rabbi Yochanan, so I understand according to Rabbi Yochanan, who says that the entire house would be with a lav, and therefore, now if we're looking from the perspective of Shimon with Sarah and with Rivka, that after Shimon does chalitza with Sarah, there's simply a lav with Rivka. So I understand why we have to learn the situation of chalatz lazoi v'asa maimer bazoi, that if he does chalitza with Sarah, then he does maimer with Rivka, so then the maimer is irrelevant, because it's teaching us that there's no, right, Kiddushin is not tofa, it's b'chai ve'lav, and the maimer is irrelevant. right? That between Shimon and Rivka there's a lab, and Kedushin is not Tofes, B'chai v'lavin, like Rabbi Akiva, that we're explaining the whole Mishnah is like Rabbi Akiva. So again, B'shlomo Rabbi Yechanan, I understand according to Rabbi Yechanan, the Omer Kulebesa B'lavkoi, that the entire family, whether it's the other brothers with Sarah or even Shimon with the Tzara, Rivka in this case, Kedushin, right? So they're all a lab. So Itzrich Lashmina, then Kedushin Tofes and B'chai v'lavin. So I need the Mishnah to teach me that even though it's only a lav between Shimon and Rivka, still Kedushin is not Tofes, like Rabbi Akiva, and Maimer is irrelevant. According to Rish Lakish, who says that the relationship between Shimon and Rivka is that of Karis, well, it's Lashmina in Kedushin Tofes b'chai v'kreisos. Does the Mishnah really need to teach me that if Shimon does Maimer with Rivka, it's irrelevant? It's Eishes Och. It's a Chiyuv Karis. Of course it's irrelevant if Shimon does Maimer with Rivka. So Amalek Rish Lakish would respond to you the timer. And 1 second, according to your logic. Sefer de Katoni, Bava also Maimer. What about in the Sefer where it says that if Shimon does Yibum with Sarah, and then Levi does Maimer with Sarah, so now we're talking about a situation where there are 2 brothers and 1 Yevamos, right? So if Reuven was married to Sarah, and then you have Shimon and Levi, and Shimon does Yibum with Sarah, and then Levi does Maimer with Sarah, I mean, why do we have to teach that case? Do I need to teach me that Levi's Maimer with Sarah is irrelevant? Sarah is now married to Shimon. She's an Eishes Ish. She's a married woman. Obviously, Levi cannot do Maimer with her. So why does the Mishnah have to teach that? So rather, I did the Tana Atoris Yov Mechav Yevama Acha. Since the Mishnah started talking about 1 Yavam and 1 Yevama, right? Reuven's married to Sarah. Reuven dies. Now Shimon has to work out Yibum with Sarah. So since we started talking about 1 Yavam and 1 Yevama, Tananami Shtei Yevamis V'Yavam Echad. So then we also taught the situation when there's 1 Yavam, Reuven, and there's 2 Yevamas, Sarah and Rivka. And once it's talking about where there's 2 Yevamos and 1 Yavam, Tananami Shtei Yevamin V'Yavam Achos. So it also talked about where there are 2 Yavams, Shimon and Levi, and 1 Yevama. So Kilu, it's Avdavka that like we needed to teach each case, but we worked through methodically, starting with 1 Yavam and 1 Yevama, and then we went to 1 Yavam and 2 Yevamas, and then we went to 2 Yevamas and 1 Yavam. Sorry, the second one was 1 Yavam and 2 Yevamas, and then we went to 2 Yavams and 1 Yavam. Okay, fine. So it taught all the different kind of ways that you can have these relationships. Alright, it said the Mishnah Cholatz v'oso Maimer v'chulei, that if he does Chalitza, right, this is talking about with 1 Yavam and 1 Yevama, right? So you have Reuven is married to Sarah, Reuven dies, and then, so now Shimon, he does Chalitza, and then after Chalitza, he does Maimer. So we say that after Chalitza, the Maimer is irrelevant. So now, B'shlomo Cholatz v'oso Maimer, Yitzter. So I understand why the Mishnah had to say that, after he did Chalitza, the Maimer afterwards is irrelevant. Even according to Rabbi Akiva, who says that once you do Chalitza, so then there's a lav, and right to marry her anymore, and Kedushin is not Tovsin. So I understand why even there we had to say that once you do Chalitza, the Maimer is irrelevant, because it's Tzrich Sakadati Chamina, Nigzer Maimer, Debasa Chalitza, Atu Maimer, Dekami Chalitza. Because I may have thought to say, even according to Rabbi Akiva, where he says that, once you do Chalitza, there's a lav of Kevin Shalabana Shuv Lo Yivne, and Kedushin is not Tovsin, B'chayve Laban. And therefore, Memele, the Maimer that Shimon would do with Sarah after Chalitza would be irrelevant. But still, I might say, you know what, he should still give her a get anyways, because we know that if before Chalitza he would do Maimer, he would have to give her a get. So I might think, let's say even after Chalitza, if he does Maimer, let's give her a get, just, as a concern for the situation where he gives a get before chalitza, where he does mimer before chalitza, and then certainly there he would have to give a get. So again, so b'shlama cholatz v'asa mimer, I understand why we had to teach that if after chalitza Shimon does mimer, it's irrelevant, he doesn't have to give a get. It's dich. I understand why it's necessary, because if thought to say nigzer mimer debasur chalitza to mimer dekami chalitza, because since mimer before chalitza you'd have to give a get, so I might think that even mimer after chalitza you should still give a get. No, we don't make such a gezerah, and mimer after chalitza you do not need to give a get. El cholatz v'nosan get. Normally, why are we even listing in the Mishnah that if Shimon does chalitza and then he gives a get, so he doesn't need to do anything else? I mean, what else is there to do? I mean, once he does chalitza, he's already asura and all the relatives. The get, it doesn't change anything. It doesn't make it why even list it at all? Well, the timing, reflect the Gemara, ema sefer. If we look at the next part of the Mishnah, what does it say? Baal v'asa mimer. That if Shimon does yibum with sarah, and then he also does mimer. Baal v'nosan get. Or if he does yibum with sarah, and then he gives her a get, he doesn't need to do chalitza. So b'shlama baal v'nosan get itztich. So I understand the chiddush of if Shimon does yibum with sarah, and then he gives her a get, he doesn't need to do chalitza. I understand the chiddush over there. Sakadaiti chamina, I may have thought to say nigzer get the basur be'ila, or to get the kami be'ila. Well, if he gives her a get before yibum, so then he would also have to do chalitza. So I might think that even after yibum, if he gives her a get and now they get divorced, he would still have to do chalitza. Okay, so we don't make the gezer. Also mimer. Normally, but why do you even need to mention that if he does yibum with her and then does mimer, it's irrelevant? Obviously, it's irrelevant. They're already married. So the ayadi the tana cholatz v'asa mimer. Since we had to teach that if he does chalitza and then does mimer, so you don't need a get. Tananami bava also mimer. So it also taught that if he does yibum with her and then gives her and then does mimer, it's irrelevant. And since we need to teach that if after yibum he gives her a get, he doesn't need to do chalitza. Tananami cholatz v'nosan get. So we also then listed that if he did chalitza and gave a get, just for sort of symmetry, but it wasn't necessarily mamish necessary to teach. Continues the Mishnah, Bizmanchi v'chulei, right? We saw machlokas in the Mishnah between the Tanakama and Reb Nechemya. That the Tanakama says that whenever chalitza happens, whether, right, we had seen the other day, right, if first there was a get, and then we talked about if there was a get, and then bia, and then mimer, etc. And we said, well, when it comes to chalitza, whenever the chalitza happens, it's final. Whereas the bia, there could still be things afterwards. So it's not necessarily final. So mastisn deloki haitana. Our Mishnah is not like the following Tana. The Tanya is we learn in the Brisa Abyosi ben Yochanan Ishu Shleim Omer Mishum Reb Meir Achas beila va'achas chalitza batchila ein achorea klum be'emtzu v'sof yesh achorea klum. So Abyosi ben Yochanan actually makes, right, he says that both when it comes to chalitza and when it comes to yibum, so if it is the first thing to happen, so then it's final. But if it happens in the middle, so then, there could still, like if it has a get and then chalitza afterwards and then mimer, so the mimer is still relevant. And there's 3 machlokas over here. Tanakama Savar Bia Dikal Migzar Gazrinun. So Tanakama says, look, when it comes to bia has to be the first thing in order for it to be final. But let's say you gave a get and then you did bia afterwards, where we have to be concerned that if we say that the bia works as yibum, so then you might end up doing yibum even after chalitza, right? So, right, bia de ikal migzar gazrinon, so we make gzer chalitza de ikal migzar lo gazrinon. Whereas when it comes to chalitza, there's no sort of gezerah that we can be concerned about. So then, we could say chalitza, even if it comes after get, after mimer, it's still fine. Ibn Nechemya Savar, whereas Ibn Nechemya holds, bia nami lekel migzar, that also when it comes to bia, there's no concerns. But what about the fact that we said, bia acher a get, you shouldn't be acher chalitza? We should be concerned that if you gave a get, if there was a get and then bia, so I might think that you can even do bia after chalitza. which of course you cannot do. You can't do Yibum after Chalitza. Given the Chalitza D'Oraisa made the Yade. No, since Chalitza is D'Oraisa, they're not going to do Yibum after Chalitza. The Kamar Tigza Bia Acher Maimer. What about in a situation where you did Maimer and then you do Yibum? Mishum Bia Acher Bia. That what if, you did, let's say, Bia with one Tzara and then Bia with the other one. So that would be a problem. So maybe I would think that if you do Maimer first, which is like, Kiddushin, and Bia is also Kiddushin. So I might think that if you could do Maimer and then Bia, so then you might do Bia and then Bia. Given the Bia D'Oraisa, made the Yade. Also, since Bia is D'Oraisa, you're not going to do Yibum after you've already done Yibum. So Rabbi Yossi ben Chonon Tzover la K'Rabanan. The Rabbi Yossi ben Chonon holds like the rabbis, you have to be concerned about Bia. The Gazer beBia v'Gazer Chalitza mishum Bia, and he also extends the Gezerah to Chalitza out of the fact, right, meaning extends it from Bia to Chalitza as well. Hadron Olach Rabbi Gamliel. Alright, well that was Perak Rabbi Gamliel. Friends, let's go weiter. We're going to start on Perak Abal Yevimto, the fellow who does Yibum. Says the Mishnah Abal Yevimto, fellow who does Yibum, B'mishogli B'mezit, whether he does it by accident, he didn't realize who he was sleeping with, whether he did it for the wrong reasons, not to necessarily be Makayim the mitzvah, but maybe because he had a certain taiva to marry his sister-in-law. Whether he was forced into it, and the Gemara is going to explain what it means that he was sort of forced into it. Whether it was willingly, even if he was doing it by accident and she was doing it sort of for the wrong reasons, who made it, or he was doing it for the wrong reasons, but she was doing it by accident, or maybe he was sort of, coerced, but she wasn't, or she was coerced and he wasn't, whether he's me'areh. There's different ways to understand it, but essentially there wasn't sufficient penetration, or whether there was sufficient penetration. It works for Yibum. And there's no differentiation between different kinds of bia. What kinds of bia? Natural bia and unnatural bia, natural bia and anal bia. And similarly, somebody who sleeps with any of the forbidden relationships in the Torah, psulis, or relationships that are not arayos, but are not allowed. Kigon, for example, Amana l'Kohen Gadol, a widow marrying a Kohen Gadol, Gusha v'chalutza l'Kohen Hedjot, or a divorcee or a chalutzi to a Kohen Hedjot, Mamzeres u'nesina l'Yisrael, a mamzeres or a nesina to a l'Yisrael, Bas Yisrael, l'mamzer l'nosin, posla, she will be posla v'l'chilek ben bia l'bia. So, even if there's ha'ara'ah, that would be enough to be a problem, and there's no differentiation whether it is natural or unnatural intercourse. My afilu. So, right, so it says afilu shogeg v'mezida, etc. So what exactly does that mean, even? So, and for the Gemara, lo miboya kamar, saying not only this, but even this. Lo miboya hu shogeg v'kam mechavna l'mitzvah. Right, you don't even need to, right, certainly in a situation where, he makes a mistake and she is intending for the mitzvah, inami he mezid v'kam mechavna, who mezid v'kam mechavna, or maybe he's having the wrong intentions and she's having kavod for the mitzvah. Elo afilu hu shogeg v'mezida, even if he's making a mistake and she's intentional and she's doing it for the wrong reasons, that both of them aren't doing the mitzvah properly. Afilu achikana, even so, the yibum is still yibum. Tani Reb Chia, afilu shneim shogegim, shneim mezidim, shneim anusim. Says Reb Chia, even if both of them are shogeg, making a mistake, even if both of them are doing it for the wrong reasons, or even if both of them are coerced, the yibum still counts. Friends, we're going to hold it here for now. Alright, so the first part of the daf really just kind of wrapped up Perak Rabban Gamliel, going through different situations of like chalitza and get and mimer and all that kind of stuff. And then we started Perak Abal Yevimto, about doing yibum. Friends, peace out.